Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Barcelona Culinary Hub. In partnership with the Culinary Institute of America, we are delighted to host a new session of our Sustainable Leadership webinar series. Today's talk is titled Building Sustainable Food Systems Through Kitchen-Driven Innovation. This case-based lecture follows the journey of a chef turned entrepreneur and policy innovator, highlighting practical strategies for integrating sustainability into culinary and business models, designing for collaboration, long-term viability, and meaningful impact, not just flavor. Our speaker needs little introduction. Chef Michel Nischan is a 4 times James Beard award-winning chef, author, and leading advocate for food equity. He's the founder of Wholesome Wave and Wholesome Crave, and for more than 40 years, he has been driving profound shifts in the food system, from championing farm to table to shaping public policy that expands access to healthy food for all. His work has influenced U.S. policy across multiple administrations and was instrumental in securing a $250 million federal investment to expand fruit and vegetable access programs. He also champions initiatives such as produce prescriptions, integrating healthy food into public health strategies. We'll run for approximately 50 minutes, with the final 10 minutes reserved for questions and answers. The session will be recorded, and we'll share the recording with participants afterwards. Michel, thank you for joining us. We're truly honored to have you here.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's my honor to be here and to join this community of future food industry leaders through this kind of masterclass that the Barcelona Culinary Hub has put together. So I thank Greg Drescher for the invitation, as well as Manu, Anna, Christina, Alan, and everybody at the Barcelona Culinary Hub for your incredible support. For everybody, I will be stewarding you through my journey from family farm worker to CEO and thought leader. Then I very much look forward to engaging with you all during our Q&A session. Full transparency, I am a chef and entrepreneur whose career did not begin in fine dining kitchens or business school classrooms. I was trained on my grandfather's farm in rural America, a place where you learn early on what it means to sweat and even bleed for your food, what it means to get your hands dirty to bring something truly meaningful and delicious to the table. That approach became the foundation of the American good food movement today, and my personal hospitality strategy for sustainability and innovation, and working towards not just why something needs to change, but how to get that done. It's not done by wishing or waiting and watching and reading news, but by building systems from the ground up and always making sure that those systems were founded on service, which I believe is the basis for true human hospitality. And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. Not a sweeping overview or an inspirational monologue, but a series of business case studies rooted in my own lived experiences, real risks, real tools, real takeaways. We'll cover how I built restaurants and companies that were profitable because they were sustainable, and sustainable because they were profitable. Both aren't the same, and they are both important, though. We'll look at how I then helped pass national food policy that scaled those values to millions of Americans who otherwise couldn't afford to eat well. And I'll share the methods and the mindset that carried me through each of those stages, from the tractor seat to the kitchen pass to the nonprofit world to the CEO seat that I now occupy. And you'll see how the heartbeat of hospitality can actually guide business leadership. Because that's the one through line in everything I've done. Designing for sustainability by putting people first, diners, farmers, funders, policymakers, regulators, frontline workers alike, and letting that be the strategy that drives innovation forward. My grandfather's farm. This is where I learned the basics to raise and butcher, to roast, to fry, to grow, to pickle and can things. A lot of those basic culinary techniques necessary to make things delicious. But I also learned something deeper. Farming is survival by feedback loop. Work is hard, margins are slim, just like in restaurants, and if people don't want what you grow, you don't survive. That experience, getting behind the hoe, understanding and working the soil, working in service to a harvest, speaking with farm stand customers, it all shaped how I lead today. And it's where my love of food was born, where my ability to listen, observe, and adjust was actually forged. You know, the culinary skills that I developed working the farm led to a truck stop diner, then eventually a French restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the late 70s, where I actually watched something I had never seen. Chefs reducing rich stocks and then mounting them with butter to make a sauce. I was blown away. It was so delicious. But then I thought, hey, if it works with butter, why not chicken fat? Why not bacon fat? Why not goat fat? When I suggested that to my chef, my Alsatian chef, he was horrified. He told me I was crazy and that it would be blasphemy. So I worked quietly to create a special, made the sauce, mounted it with bacon fat, and then I served it to him for his approval. And man, he went nuts. What Alsatian doesn't love bacon fat, right? And he said, Michel, how did you do this? So I told him what I had done, and he said, damn you, that's blasphemy, but it's also really good. So I had made this guy a believer. And that moment taught me that I didn't need to either rebel or retreat. I didn't need to hide it and do it anyway and not tell anybody, that I could actually win support by taking the time to cook and serve something undeniably delicious, using feedback, not defiance, to bring somebody along. In the early 80s, I found myself as the executive chef at a French restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The American food supply at that time was bleak. No heirloom tomatoes, no biodiversity of any kind. Tomatoes were available year round, but they were pink, hard, mealy, perfectly round, and exactly the same size. It was bizarre, not delicious. I thought, what if my customers could taste the type of like sweet, juicy tomato I grew up on, and I had to find the answer in a seed catalog, which is something I actually knew how to use. I just needed to find farmers willing to grow what I wanted. The only farmers at the time with the capacity to grow for me were actually corn, soy, and wheat growers. Specialty crop growers didn't exist in the Midwest. They were all in California. So I convinced them to grow for me by offering to pay them in advance for the crop. They agreed to plant, weed, water, but at harvest time, they were busy with their conventional crops, so I and my culinary team, much to their chagrin, had to go pick our vegetables. I had to really inspire and convince my cooks to go that extra mile, literally, by driving to the farms, harvesting the produce, bringing it back to the restaurant, cleaning it, sorting it, cooking it. And in 1981, this was unheard of. So instead of the usual staff meal, which often in American restaurants at the time was hot dogs, or food of the lowest common denominator, leftovers from the previous night's service, we created from scratch family meals with the fresh ingredients that we all picked together, and the flavors blew them away, turned them into believers. In short, I was working through three challenges: how to convince farmers to grow, how to convince my cooks to harvest and then clean and then cook, and so how to convince my customers to value the results. Overcoming this set of challenges is what built the foundations of what people now call the good food movement, long before farm to table became any type of a household term. Now fast forward to the early 90s, my career was taking off. I was on this rising star trajectory. I was being recognized as one of the leaders of the farm to table movement, and I had already established a history of restaurants known for breaking the usual culinary norms, largely by using boutique, artisanal, locally sourced ingredients, which a lot of restaurants still don't do today here in the United States. But at that time, my son, Chris, who was age 5, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and everything changed. With this came the realization that food could have a profound impact on human health. I never thought that before. I was suddenly staring down a culinary challenge I never saw coming. How do you build a meaningful dining experience that does no harm? I wasn't a doctor. I mean, how do you do a dining experience without butter, cream, flour, refined sugar, animal fats, which in the early 90s were all taboo? It's changed a bit. The science is new, but still, it was difficult, and I had to go with what I knew. So, could it even be done? This was a disruption that was terrifying to me. I mean, many of my closest peers warned that basing my first restaurant in New York City on a cuisine of well-being would end my career. But I had to do it. I couldn't feed my customers something I wouldn't feed my family. So I met my fear with creativity, building feedback loops, and experimenting relentlessly until I found new methods. Reducing vegetable juices into sauces, using dehydrated vegetable and tuber powders as thickeners, crafting pristine stocks without mirepoix to deliver clean, obvious animal flavor in an environment where you had limited ingredients. Most chefs I knew said it wouldn't work, but I believed what few did back then, and that's that health and pleasure could and had to share the same plate. And that became kind of the blueprint for my restaurant, Heartbeat, a place where we didn't just cut back on certain ingredients, we actually cut through convention. This was R&D in its purest form. I mean, I wanted a sweet potato sauce for a duck dish. So I started by juicing a sweet potato. And when I first did it, I was thinking, can you even get juice out of a sweet potato? But I juiced it, I got juice. When I put the juice in a pot and brought it to a simmer, it got very thick, pasty even, and unpleasant. Then I remembered how starch from slicing potatoes in a water bath, the starch would settle to the bottom, so I allowed sweet potato juice to stand for a few hours, and the starch settled to the bottom. I poured off the remaining juice and reduced it until it thickened when the remaining starch caught up with the juice, and the result was this beautiful, unctuous, floral, viscous sauce that tasted absolutely like sweet potato. Once we refined it by reducing a pristine, clear duck stock into it, we had a sweet potato dish that brought people to tears. That's where it all began to come together for me. We built hundreds of dishes that way. Relentless experimentation, informed by audiences from diverse points of view, my first real, meaningful feedback loop. Now, here's what I want you to take away from this. The innovation didn't just come from me, it came from we. Yes, the ideas were mine from the beginning, but every one of those dishes passed through stakeholders in a feedback loop. Our line cooks, our servers, our dishwashers, my peers, my competitors, our guests. Everyone had a voice, and we'd taste, adjust, get it wrong, get it better over and over again. You see, true innovation doesn't happen just in isolation. It happens when you design an environment where failure is accepted and collaboration is expected. At Heartbeat, we structured our kitchen to do exactly that. Feedback loops weren't an accident or an afterthought. They were an intentional part of the mise en place. One of the earliest lessons I learned, first working the land, now working the line, is that you can't innovate and iterate effectively if you don't listen. My ideas would only be as good as their impact on the people I was trying to serve. And we were not trying to be trendy. In fact, at the time, fat was king. In the mid-90s, fat was in. It was the thing. We were actually going against the trends. The term plant forward did not exist, but we had a strategy. Make the dishes so delicious that nobody would miss what we left out. And then build it in a way that it's viable, not just for me, but for the farmer down the road, the line cook on the line, my peers from other restaurants, guests at the table, and the monthly operating statement. It had to be financially viable. That's how we got farmers to grow specific ingredients for the fleur-de-lis, heirloom tomatoes, bitter greens, even animals, because I paid them in advance. It was a financial risk for me, but security for them. It built trust, and it built a local supply chain that made truly good food accessible for my customers. That's innovation and economic sustainability through relationship building. Investing in good food wasn't a marketing line like many still see it today. It was a supply chain solution. And today you can now buy heirloom tomatoes in grocery stores across America, even at a Piggly Wiggly in rural Alabama. That's possible only because chefs demanded it, farmers grew it, and consumers fell in love with it. That's sustainability win. That's a business win. I believe if you want sustainability, regenerative approaches to work and to stick, they have to feel like home. It has to taste like joy. It has to meet people where they are. Be something everybody feels they can engage in. After all, if it's only accessible to the wealthy few, will it ever truly be sustainable? I think not. So that's the philosophy I carry into every venture, whether it's nonprofit work, business development, policy change. Innovation only works when it's grounded in empathy, and building active, effective feedback loops brings empathy to life. After receiving 2 of my James Beard Awards at Heartbeat, I was invited into culinary forums and think tanks. Harvard University's T.H. Chan School for Public Health, the CIA's World of Healthy Flavors, and I was the only white American in the room. We had Aglia Cremesi, the famous Aglia Cremesi, Nobu Matsuhisa, Suvir Saran, people from blue zone areas around the world where healthy food existed for centuries. And I didn't go there to build my brand or to lecture. I went there to present, to listen, and to learn. And some of what I learned truly wrecked me. I met researchers and public health leaders who showed me data not just about diet-related diseases like Chris's, like diabetes and type 2 diabetes, but also about the poverty that causes low-income Americans to make up the majority of those who suffer from them. The SNAP program is America's form of food assistance designed for people struggling with low income so that they can actually afford to feed their families, but the program is woefully underfunded. I learned about SNAP families running out of their benefits by the second week of the month, parents with only $2 to spend on dinner for all 4 family members, not because of bad choices, not because of a lack of education, but because of bad luck and broken systems. Parents had to rely on donated food from food pantries, most of which is ultra processed, to provide any food for their families at all. I started taking action by doing what I do best. I worked within the existing system and donated my time to cooking demos at grade schools, low-income grade schools, to show families how to cook donated broccoli from pantries so they could fall in love with it, fall in love with broccoli. But I quickly and very humbly learned a critical lesson. It wasn't so much that these families didn't know how to cook. It was that broccoli wasn't part of their culture. Haitian families prefer breadfruit, kalaloo, boniato. These are foods they love, know how to cook, and want their kids to eat. They just couldn't afford to add them to the table along with the ultra-processed staples that they had to settle for from a food pantry. I thought back to the economics I learned and realized there's no business model for the family that runs out of food dollars in the middle of the month. No point of entry for the single mother with 2 jobs, 3 kids, and $1.84 to spend on dinner tonight. So that realization shook me. It shifted my perspective. The issue wasn't cooking lessons, it was purchasing power. So I asked myself, what if we could grow something new? What if instead of giving families food they didn't want, we gave them the financial resources to buy the foods they loved and already knew how to prepare? What if we could take the same level of care and strategy I put into saucer or supply chain and apply it to nutritional insecurity? The recipe wasn't the problem. The lack of affordable food access was. So that's how my nonprofit Wholesome Wave was born. Our mission was bold: double the value of federal food benefits when spent on fruits and vegetables. In simple terms, if you went to the market or a grocery retailer and swiped your SNAP card for $10, you would receive $20 in fruit and vegetable money. Sounds simple, great idea, But the problem is, at the time, it was illegal. You could not market something to a SNAP consumer that you didn't make available to everybody. It was designed, the regulation was designed to prevent predatory marketing to low-income communities by junk food and soda manufacturers. No one ever imagined a 2-for-1 fruit and vegetable sales, so we had to change that. So we created a feedback loop, not with diners and staff members this time, but with policymakers and regulators. We engaged leaders at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and in Congress to put a well-executed idea on their plates rather than something delicious. We did our research, scheduled meetings to first understand their biases. Most lawmakers thought poor people didn't care about healthy food or didn't know what to do with it. Second, their boundaries. It couldn't be something that hurt farmers. No discounted foods. A lot of food banks were asking farmers to donate food or to sell them food at a discount, and farmers are already in a price-taking position. So that was a hard boundary. And then their fears. Third, getting sued by grocery manufacturers for providing an unfair trade advantage in a public retail setting. So no programs in grocery retail. We were authentic in our approach, using honest conversations and full transparency about what we wanted to accomplish. We adjusted our message and program throughout that process. By designing the program in a way that worked within real and perceived stakeholder limits, we fielded something they were comfortable allowing. And we established trust, which served us very well down the road, as you'll see. We piloted in farmers markets, and the program worked. We surveyed participating SNAP shoppers and proved that when low-income families had just a little bit of money to spend on fruits and vegetables, they overwhelmingly chose them and ate them, eliminating biases. Farmers increased sales. They put more land in production. They diversified their plantings. They hired more people. Policymakers saw evidence of classic small business support and that their boundaries were well addressed. To address their fears, we created a feedback loop with potential detractors, processed food manufacturers, the ones who were going to sue the USDA. So I used my Celebrity Chef platform to do free keynotes for grocery manufacturing think tanks and forums in exchange for executive lunches so I could share our big idea with those decision makers. They were thrilled with the idea and its success, but they asked, why are you only doing this in farmers markets? Why not in grocery stores? When I explained to them the government's fear of lawsuits, they said, we would never dream of suing the USDA for helping low-income families eat their vegetables. So I said, hey, do you mind putting that in writing? And they did. So we addressed biases, boundaries, and fears all through multiple feedback loops with families, with farmers, with government officials, members of Congress, and even food manufacturing executives. By the 2014 Farm Bill, we were in 26 states with over 400 partners, and the program became a fully funded federal pilot. By 2018, the program expanded into 49 states with over 1,400 nonprofit operating partners, generating ever-mounting evidence that the program was economically benefiting thousands of farm and local retail operators, and that hundreds of thousands of low-income consumers were buying and eating more fruits and vegetables. That same year, the program was fully funded to baseline, making it a permanent part of the federal Farm Bill. It can't be debated on the floor. It cannot be defunded during a government shutdown. It's permanent. It's here to stay, but it needs to grow. In summarizing the rise and success of this program, we fielded an illegal program in 2007 and made it permissible working with the Bush administration. It became a fully funded pilot during the Obama administration. Then it was made permanent in 2018 during the first Trump administration. We proved nutritious food is a fundamental human right and that it should be nonpartisan, that good food should transcend all politics and be important to everybody, regardless of their ideology. In 2009, we launched a concept for crazy idea. What if doctors can prescribe fruits and vegetables to at-risk patients instead of waiting for them to get sick and then prescribe them medication, otherwise known as produce prescriptions? The concept caught on. Programs are now being operated by over 100 community-based organizations in the United States, in over 30 states, even some of the territories. But there are some real challenges to the work to overcome. One, it's expensive. Not only do you have to pay for the food benefit, but well visits to the doctor's office are not included for Medicaid members. So the low-income patients who represent our target population, that's them. Clinical visits have to be paid for. Second, to engage with community health centers or public hospitals, you have to get internal review board approval. It's a long, expensive, arduous process. Third, there are actually, believe it or not, folks within the healthcare system who feel food simply doesn't belong there, that our healthcare system is about medication and treatment. When we succeeded in embedding SNAP incentives in the Farm Bill, we achieved a carve-out to cover produce prescriptions. While we were successfully advocating for nutrition incentives in agriculture, we were being completely ignored by the health committees in Congress until they saw the word prescription in a permanent piece of federal legislation. So that opened up to us a whole new world of stakeholders, from clinical practitioners to members of a variety of committees that we hadn't yet even worked with. Folks who would never return our phone calls actually started calling us. The deeper Wholesome Wave went, the more I was approached to keynote events, do TED Talks, speak about food policy at summits. We were very well positioned as a leader in the good food movement. We then formed and convened the National Produce Prescription Collaborative, or NPPC, in 2019, because we knew at this point that an effective movement would require the feedback and work of multiple stakeholders. We founded, bringing together program practitioners, academics, healthcare professionals, health insurers, and others to advance the concept of moving produce prescriptions out of the federal Farm Bill into federally sponsored health plans like Medicaid, Medicare, Indian Health Services, and the Veterans Administration. We've now successfully launched federally funded pilots in veteran and tribal communities and with broader populations in a handful of states. So we're gaining momentum. Good food and public policy is now becoming a real movement in the United States. And movements are how you change a system. All this from a chef wanting to provide the opportunity for everybody to eat a delicious heirloom tomato. Around that same time, in the late 20-teens, Wholesome Wave had grown, but we were still mostly funded through philanthropy. And anyone who's worked in nonprofits knows how precarious that can be. Every year you have to re-earn your budget. So it's hard to plan long-term, invest deeply, scale meaningfully. So I asked myself yet another question. What if there were a business model for fueling change? What if there was a way to help fund Wholesome Wave through direct commerce? Enter my company, Wholesome Crave. By then, I had refined and expanded in many ways how I used feedback loops and wanted to see if I could apply them to prove that food manufacturing could be done differently while also sustaining the important food systems change work at Wholesome Wave. So basically, we launched a different social enterprise model, simpler than a B Corp. The late actor Paul Newman, some of you may know who he was my partner. And once the Newman's Own model of corporate philanthropy became legal in 2018, and I'll say up front, that business model itself could be a whole nother masterclass. I launched Wholesome Crave, my plant-forward, clean-label, culturally authentic soup company. This ties directly back to all the values I galvanized and expanded during the Heartbeat days and the Wholesome Wave days, but on a much greater scale. The goal was now to address real issues faced by large food service operators who want to have a positive impact on both people and planet, but it's hard for them to do in scaled environments. The decision to be a soup company didn't come out of thin air. It came out of, you might guess it, feedback loops, if you're sensing a theme here. So I spoke with industry influencers like Michael Bacher from Google, Fidel Bauchio at the Compass Group, the CEO of Newman's Own, the chief sustainability officers at Sodexo, and I learned that plant-based and plant-forward soups were among one of the hardest things to execute in one of these scaled environments. They were labor-intensive, hard to make consistently delicious at volume. It was a real market gap, so I chose soup. I was also very familiar with the movements in the college and university space, like the Real Food Challenge, CIA's Menus of Change, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. I actually keynoted their very first gathering in Cambridge a couple of decades ago. Those existing movements and their available research provided yet another layer of feedback to the loop. I spoke to chef friends of mine who had moved from independent restaurants into scaled food service for security, but they brought with them all of their values, and I learned something from them really important. They did not want to solve climate change using things like fake meat. They wanted to address plant-based demand, but didn't want vegan chicken noodle soup. They wanted culturally authentic dishes representing the parts of the world that had already for centuries figured out how to serve plant-based, plant-forward meals using whole, minimally processed foods. At this point in my life, I knew kitchens, how to build teams, design experiences, turn vegetables into something craveable, delicious. I could do that. I even understood forecasting and managing, profit and loss statements for independent restaurants and hotels, but I did not understand food manufacturing, corporate structures, C Corp conversions, capitalization tables, equity investments, the overly complex environments within the wholesale food manufacturing space. So I did what chefs do best. I built a team and I leaned on them. I surrounded myself with people who were stronger than me in the areas where I was weak, and I asked the questions, made the mistakes, and slowly I learned the language of the business, one demand plan at a time. Here's what I want you as students and future leaders to really think about. Just imagine what you can do with the access to the resources you have at this moment in this academic environment that you've been gifted with. And the experience that's going to follow you after you graduate, and all the support that CIA is going to provide for you. You have a good fortune of receiving this world-class education in both the craft and the business of food, and you're learning how to lead kitchens and companies. You're being exposed to the full range of tools that many of us had to learn the hard way through trial and error and countless sleepless nights. So you're already a few steps ahead of where I was when I took my first leap. Please, I implore you, take advantage of that, build on that. Because the future needs food leaders who can really authentically balance flavor and finance, values and value chains. It still has to be delicious, and it's got to be sustainable. It's got to be regenerative. Only you can do that. And that's what we're all about at Wholesome Crave. That's what I tried to accomplish. A soup company rooted in authenticity, delivering products that food service operators can execute consistently, their eaters love it, and their stated values of sustainability and equity are well addressed. Here's the crux. I didn't build it alone. I brought stakeholders in from day one. Institutional buyers, food service operators, chefs, nutritionists, and importantly, the people who would be eating our soups. We asked, what flavors do you like? Simple stuff. What cultural attributes are most meaningful to you? What social ill bothers you the most? What do you need from your foods provider other than just a product? How do we make this efficient, affordable, craveable? All those things. We tested relentlessly, and we kept that same feedback loop that I used since the farm alive. We also hired experts in operations, finance, sales, because I'm a chef. I cook stuff. I'm not a supply chain guru. And if I wanted to succeed in this space, I had to build a team that was stronger than me in every area where I lacked experience. And that's kind of the next big lesson here. You don't scale something by being the smartest person in the room. You scale by creating space for colleagues smarter than you, making room for them. Doing this with Wholesome Crave, we were able to create a circular model. Chefs make food people love. Institution serves food that meet health and sustainability goals. Supply chain partners respond and bring in more sustainable ingredients. Revenue flows back to support families in need. The product sells itself because it tastes great, hits health metrics, aligns with the values of the organizations that we sell to. All of the values and approaches I've used, from the farm to Heartbeat to Wholesome Wave, live in every bowl of soup that we design. But we also design cultural authenticity right into the corporate structure intentionally. Instead of just writing about equity in an employee manual and holding people accountable, we put equity into our capitalization table. Maneet Chauhan, a CIA graduate from South India, Sean Sherman, the Lakota sous chef, Pierre Thiam from Senegal, and the leader of the Fonio movement. Chefs from the cultures whose recipes we honor our owners in the company, and we openly share that business model because we want to inspire others to rethink how food manufacturing can work. This is how you change a system, and all because somebody wanted to provide everybody the opportunity to eat a beautiful heirloom tomato, regardless of their income. So now here we are today, just us, me and you guys. We're not just reflecting on my career, but on a professional journey that began in farming, then carried through fine dining, food as medicine, food and nutrition insecurity, food policy, corporate manufacturing. Seems like a whirling dervish or a winding path, but to me, it's been a single continuous loop, a feedback loop that's never stopped running. And it's always been about food, always. If I could distill everything I've learned into one key component, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but it is the crux. It's collaboration. It's the most overused word, but most underused ingredient in innovation, the most powerful force in systems change, and the one that's hardest to get right. It's not just about a team building exercise for internal synergy. Collaboration is a disciplined practice, and it's the most essential ingredient in effective collaboration is not agreement, it's feedback from diverse perspectives. Feedback loops are how collaborations come to life, how your ideas become better, your team's stronger, your work more transformative. They're how vision becomes strategy, strategy becomes action, and action becomes a palpable reality. So, sometimes we treat our ideas like fixed visions. We treat guests, critics, even funders and stakeholders like a captive audience. This is a chef way of thinking. But genuine hospitality is not a performance art. It's a participatory act. I believe it's not about shocking or wowing people for your own personal gain. It's about feeding them, body, mind, soul, the whole 9 yards. Take molecular gastronomy, for example. It's a fascinating, critically important form of culinary expression. But when it becomes more about cleverness than connection, more about ego than empathy, we risk building walls instead of bridges, creating distance instead of resonance. And we certainly risk building ideas that are absolutely going to dazzle some people, but they will never scale. As chefs, we have options of unique privilege. We can succeed in silos. We can perfect dishes behind closed doors, safe space. We can gain fame, even Michelin stars, all without ever having to go beyond the four walls of our kitchen. And there's absolutely value in that pursuit. That's what some people want to do, and they should. Culinary excellence is a very worthy endeavor in and of itself, all on its own. But if your goal is to create true impact and you want to utter the words sustainability or regeneration, if you want your work to reach communities, influence systems, change lives, then your canvas needs to expand well beyond the echo chamber of a singular concept in a confined location. Collaboration can't be a bolt-on. It can't be an afterthought. It can't only be for strategic planning processes. It must be built into your operating system, plain and simple. At Heartbeat, I could have changed, stars. I could have chased stars. I had the technical skills to do it, but that would have required me to operate from a different center of gravity, one that is antithetical to who I am. My center of gravity has remained the same as it was on my grandfather's farm. Serve, nourish, make people happy when they bite into something that we grew or cooked. And that is the call that I extend to all of you. To all of you. Build businesses that nourish, using systems that reflect the dignity of the people they serve. And don't just talk about collaboration, design for it, then work towards it. It's hard work. Collaboration is the impact engine, and feedback is the currency that fuels it. And if you don't have mechanisms for gathering, processing, and acting on feedback, then you're not building a movement, you're just broadcasting. You're just telling people about your great idea. And then you're serving it to them the way that you want it to be served. It's okay. It's not going to change anything. True feedback loops require risk and vulnerability. You have to be willing to be wrong or accept that what might be right for you or the few might be very misaligned with what matters to the many, aka everybody else. So feedback loops should include not just your funders, not just your guests, but your dishwashers, your farmers, delivery drivers, porters, patients, critics, your community. And more importantly, they should include those who might not agree with what you're trying to accomplish or how. People who might not share all the values you hold. But because the nature of food is so universal, you will always be able to find a few points of alignment that make your shared table a table that everybody wants to sit at. That common ground allows forward momentum. Systemic change isn't a top-down act. It's weaving. You take threads from every stakeholder you can find, you pull them together to create something stronger, more vibrant than any single strand ever could be on its own. You don't just share power, you generate it mutually. True sustainability, human, environmental, economic, cultural, societal, it is a full contact sport, not a solo climb. In short, collaboration, it's rarely comfortable. I've seen people in groups claim collaboration, but work only with those who share their views, values, and belief systems. That's not collaboration. That's club dancing in an echo chamber, honestly. That's all it is. Think about that Alsatian chef I mentioned earlier. When he told me I was a crazy blasphemer for wanting to mount a sauce with bacon fat instead of butter, I could have rebelled or deceived. I could have backed down. I could have lied and served it anyway. That would have been easier. But I did not do that. Instead, I cooked, I served, I solicited his response, and in that moment, his palate became part of my feedback loop. I didn't force change. I cooked his way into it. This led to collaborations between he and I on a number of other menu concepts, and eventually an invitation to become his sous chef. That same approach I've used my whole life, from farm worker to chef, to farm-to-table advocate, to restaurateur, nonprofit founder, food as medicine champion, public policy advocate, soup company CEO. The common thread wasn't just food. It was collaboration fueled by effective feedback loops. It was understanding that the best ideas don't win on merit alone. They win when they're built with others in mind, when they solve real problems for real people, when they travel across barriers. This only happens when you take the time to listen before you lead. And now it's your turn. It was their turn, my turn, it's yours. And you're entering this industry at a time of extraordinary transformation. The old models are cracking, they're breaking, the supply chain is shifting. The public is more aware on all sides of the political aisle and more anxious than ever before about what food means to their health, their neighborhood, their environment, their kids, their future. And the world needs more than just chefs. It needs real food leaders. It needs you. Leaders who understand flavor and finance, equity and excellence, concepts of perpetual regeneration, but also effective collaboration. Leaders who know how to make the sauce and also change the system. In closing, I hope I helped you learn to do 4 critical things. So I'll recap, not just as chefs, but as leaders who are going to shape our collective food future. That's what I'm welcoming you to, please. First, connect farm-born feedback loops to modern kitchen and supply chain decisions. They fit, it works. True sustainability in leadership begins with listening more broadly to everybody. The best food ideas don't start on whiteboards or spreadsheets. They start in soil, they start in sweat, they start in blood. They start when somebody notices what's missing and has the courage to ask, what if we could grow something different, whether it's a tomato or a business model? Second, design and run feedback loops inside the kitchens and businesses you design. Where constraints aren't your enemy, they're your creative advantage. Cook and serve with empathy, test relentlessly, invite your team and others into the process, not because it's trendy and not because I said so, but because it's effective. That's how an idea becomes a dish a reality, and a movement becomes something people love, remember, and share. The next great innovation will not come from a perfect recipe. It's going to come from a collaborative team iterating with intention, grounded in service that extends well beyond the 4 walls of any business. Third, translate those same methods into business behaviors and policies, even in the face of resistance. By mapping out stakeholder biases, boundaries, and fears, you can get that done. Whether it's a congressperson skeptical about SNAP, a regulator afraid of a lawsuit, or a CFO in your own company fixated on gross margin, you need to understand what keeps them up at night and how to address it before you ask them to join you. That's how you win hearts without shouting. That's how you scale impact without dissent. When you listen broadly and deeply, even to those who disagree with you, you will find your way forward. That's how we took an illegal incentive program and permanently embedded it in federal legislation through 4 administrations led by both sides of the political aisle. It's how we turned soup into a system change vehicle, and it's how you will turn your business ideas into reality. Fourth and finally, embed collaboration and feedback loops into your business model. Do this, and your work won't end at the pass. Because if your leadership is confined to a kitchen or a restaurant, your impact is too. And that might be okay. That might be what you want. It's not what I want. It's not what others want. If you design for scale, building collaboration into your margins, into your menus, into your mission, then your food can ripple outward into hospitals, schools, factory lines, public policy, and perhaps most importantly, onto the dinner tables of the very people who need it the most but can't afford it. This is not just about food. It's about systems, it's about power, and it's about how we as chefs and food professionals choose to use the incredible platform that we've been gifted. For everyone here today, especially students, here is my challenge to you. When you're dreaming up your next dish, your next concept, your next business model, don't wait to be discovered. Don't wait for permission. Get to work. Structure it like a dialogue. Welcome the right people into the kitchen. Build in feedback. Welcome potential detractors to the table. Listen and hear everyone. Measure not just quality, but care. Make it good enough to survive in the wild and kind enough to earn a perpetual place there. Because if you do that, if you can build an environment that welcomes collaboration by combining your values with your voice and your guests and partners' needs, desires, and their voices too, you won't just change the menu. You'll change the system, and who knows, maybe even the world. Thank you, and many blessings to you.
Thank you very much, Michel, for your awesome speech. And I invite our participants to ask the questions they want.
So maybe Pablo?
I saw that. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hey, how you doing, Chef Michael? I'm Chef Cordero. I'm from Puerto Rico. As well, I'm also a farmer. And I was looking at the sustainability of my farm. The thing is that I have a lot of avocado and I also have a lot of breadfruit. So it's bad to change to sell it. So the thing is that I changed it to do a flour so I can make some pancakes.
Mm,
So I changed that because it was very difficult to sell it.
mm,
Also, my kitchen don't going to eat a lot of avocado because it's not that big.
right.
And I was looking at your page, and I want to know what about your boot camp?
Oh, the boot camp?
Yes, yes, sir.
Oh yeah, so I co-founded what is now known as the James Beard Chef Boot Camp for Policy and Change with a gentleman named Eric Kessler back in 2012, and we partnered with Beard. It's now the center pillar for their impact programs. But what we do at the boot camp, chef, is we invite chefs to apply. You go to the James Beard website, type in Chef Bootcamp. It'll take you to a page to fill out a survey so that you can apply for boot camp. We bring together 12 to 16 chefs at a time. It's a
Okay.
3-day forum where we really help chefs start to hone and focus everything that they care about down to 1 or 2 issues so that they can devote their focus to that. It's not uncommon for chefs to want to solve every problem: antibiotics in the food supply, food and nutrition insecurity, sustainable seafood, indigenous food sovereignty. We donate to everything, but what we try to do is really teach the chefs to identify the thing that keeps them awake at night the most, so that they can
Mhm.
put all of and all of their advocacy expertise behind that. And then we teach them the basic tools for advocacy, because no matter what your issue area is, whether it's indigenous food sovereignty, migrant farm worker rights, sustainable seafood, the methods and the techniques for successful advocacy are identical. So that's what the boot camp is about, chef. And we had a chef from Puerto Rico, a couple of chefs from Puerto Rico at our boot camp. So please go on the Beard website and apply.
Yes, thank you, chef. I
You're welcome,
appreciate it.
chef. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. We have a message in the chat, and I'm going to read it. Hello, it's from Luis. Hello, Chef Nischan. I'm Luis from Colombia. In your view, what should restaurants prioritize today if they want to balance sustainability, profitability, and social responsibility?
You know, it's small bites at a time. You know, when I started, I really just wanted to find a ripe tomato. So when I did those first forward payments to corn and soy growers to grow vegetables for me, it was pretty simple. It was tomatoes, some heirloom peppers, some herbs, things that were not good in the American supply chain back in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Over time, when I looked at just the wage disparity within restaurant environments, I chose to tackle that at a time when I had everything else working for me. I didn't. It's a mistake to try to do it all at once, because no matter what country you're in, restaurant business models are very hard pressed. The margins, like farming, are very, very low. So you pick one of the things, again, kind of like what I just described to the other chef about the boot camp. Pick the thing in your business model that's most meaningful to you, because you'll work the hardest at that. You'll spend the most amount of time on it. You'll be most passionate about it, so you can bring your staff, you can bring your guests along, and do it one thing at a time. You're going to test it. It's going to challenge your business model, but eventually your business model will calm. You'll find the right approach, and then you can move on to another subject. So it's not uncommon in the good food movement and in the environmental movement for people to want everything to be perfect now. I say, do not make the perfect the enemy of the good. Incremental progress is the only way we're going to get to a regenerative food future without blowing up the existing food system, which is something that would cause millions of people to starve. So one thing at a time, chef, no matter what it is. Guys at CIA, do make my email address available for those, because if you have other questions or you want to go deeper on a question that I don't fully answer for you, I'm happy to take email requests and do a little bit of a deeper dive if you want.
Thank you very much. Do we have another question? Pleasure, please.
Hello, is somebody muted by chance?
I'm not sure. Well, if we want, I'm going to close the session for today. Thank you, Chef Nischan, for an inspiring and deeply practical conversation. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Tonight, we have reminded that kitchen-driven innovation can move markets, shape policy, and expand equitable access to good food when chefs, entrepreneurs, and communities design together for lasting impact. On behalf of Barcelona Culinary Hub and our partners at the Culinary Institute of America, we appreciate your time and engagement, and we'll share the session recording with you shortly. Until the next time, keep leading your purpose, creativity, and care. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much, Michel, for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.